This is the new Suunto Race, taking the recent released Suunto Vertical and giving it an AMOLED screen and more than a dozen new features. This new sapphire crystal stainless steel backed smartwatch dramatically steps up Suunto's polish in the endurance smartwatch realm. But most critically, it does so without the price tag. This thing is a mind-boggling $449, leagues below the rest of their competitors. It's clear that with the Suunto Race, Suunto is coming for blood. The question is, do they have the features and accuracy to back that up? Now, I've been using this watch a bit, including some time in the Alps more than a month ago. Yet for this video, I'm going to keep it more of a hands-on video. There's a few new software features that have been added to the Suunto Race more recently that I want to test out a little bit deeper and make sure they're as accurate as Suunto claims. So I'll follow up very shortly here with a full in-depth review, including all the accuracy bits that you know and love. Now, the very first new feature on this watch is probably the most obvious one. It's that AMOLED display. In particular, it's a 1.43-inch AMOLED touchscreen display at 1000 nits. 1000 nits is basically the same ballpark as pretty much all the other watches out there, including the just released Polar Vantage V3, most of Garmin's watches, etc. Some of Apple's watches have higher nit levels, but frankly, it's just not needed. Today's AMOLED displays are plenty bright. I'm here in Hawaii right now at the Ironman World Championships, and honestly, the screen has been no problems at all. Out in the lava fields, in the open water, in bright sun, all the scenarios where you think it might struggle, it's been spot on. Now, if we compare the size of this watch to the Suunto Vertical, you're going to notice the sides are a bit more tapered than the Suunto Vertical. Suunto Vertical is kind of like a brick in a sense. This is a little more polished, you could say. I've got also compared here to the Polar Vantage V3 as well as the Garmin Epics, the middle-sized Garmin Epics there, just so you can see. Though practically speaking, like from a price ballpark realm, this would really compare more against Garmin's Forerunner 965, but stylistically it compares more against the Epics. And also I forgot the 965 at home, so this is what you got to look at. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, the pricing here is mind-boggling. It is $449 US for the base model and $549 for the titanium model. The base model has stainless steel backing and the higher-end model has a titanium backing. They both have sapphire crystal glass on the top of them, and they both have identical features beyond all that. It's just simply the case, either titanium or stainless steel. For context on just how low this price is, the also just released 2 days ago Polar Vantage V3 is $600 or $599, and the exact same price is the Garmin Forerunner 965 as well. So we're talking $150 difference. And while you could definitely have a solid feature debate on the differences between the Garmin watch and the Suunto, with Garmin, unquestionably having more features there, and that's why it would be priced $150 more, you'd have to get deep in the nitpicking weeds to justify the extra $150 for the Polar Vantage V3. So Suunto, like I said, is coming for blood here. This is something that's really interesting and kind of a departure from the past when they've often priced their higher-end watches just a heck of a lot higher, and they just simply couldn't keep up on features with their competitors. Now, one of the new hardware features you probably noticed on the side there is the addition of the digital crown. You're going to use this for moving down between menus as well as going ahead and zooming in and out of the map. This watch does have full maps on it, just like the Suunto Vertical did this past spring. It's the exact same maps, except they just look a heck of a lot nicer because the display is a heck of a lot nicer. You'll download those maps via Wi-Fi to the watch. Basically, just choose whatever countries you want, whatever territories or regions, depending on how big that particular country and region is, and then it just syncs via your Wi-Fi networks and pulls down the map. It's really straightforward, really easy to do, and has been working pretty well on both the Vertical as well as the Race. Oh, hey, and a quick note, if you are finding this video interesting or useful, just give it a like down the bottom there or hit subscribe. It really does help with the video and the channel quite a bit. Next, like the Vertical as well, it also has multiband or dual frequency GPS. That allows it basically the holy grail of GPS accuracy. I'll dive more into the accuracy later on, but one of the things I would say is that from a Suunto Vertical standpoint, they are unquestionably in that top tier of accuracy, matching Garmin and Apple in that top tier of GPS accuracy there. So that's good to see, and I'm seeing basically the same general performance there as well on the Suunto Race. Again, all things I'll cover in my in-depth review, but looking at this initial data, it's looking pretty strong. Next, from a battery life standpoint, if you turn on all the features, all the multi-band or dual frequency features and everything, it's going to get 40 hours of GPS battery life. You can see the chart here on the screen, and that then escalates up to about 120 hours of GPS battery life. So pretty solid. I think most people would find what they need in the middle ground between those two extremes for pretty much all activity types that you're going to do. Meanwhile, from a smartwatch standpoint, there's essentially two different battery claims at play. The first is gesture-based. That means that the screen, it turns off when your wrist is down like this, and you raise your wrist up, and the screen turns back on again. on. I'm using always on though mode instead, which means right now you can just barely see the time from your, probably a little bit too far away to see the time, but once I go up like this, it goes to full brightness and it has the full screen on it. In that mode it gets 7 days. And I would say my testing seems to support those numbers. Now, one of the new software features on this is new HRV tracking, a heart rate variability tracking. And that basically comes in 3 different like unlock levels, if you will. The first one is that the first night you sleep, you will see your HRV values from last night. So I'll always show your HRV values from last night. This is something that tracks it during your sleep automatically. And then after the 3 days, you'll get your 7-day average, meaning that you have to have at least 3 days to start unlocking the 7-day average, and you'll start seeing that. And after 14 days, then you'll get your HRV baseline. So 14 nights of sleep to be very precise there. And that essentially establishes that baseline of your norm from a heart rate variability standpoint. And then from there, it can determine things like fatigue and so on. And what's cool about that is that gets into the next new feature, which is that they've updated their Suunto Coach functionality, which is basically the pieces on the watch and in the app that gives you training and recovery guidance to incorporate that HRV tracking information. So if it, for example, sees that your HRV has plummeted, but your training load has stayed the same or actually gotten easier, then it may kind of give you some signals that, hey, you should maybe look at that a little more deeply. Now, if you've been around Suunto's block a while, you've probably noticed a bunch of new user interface elements. Suunto has revamped the UI on the Suunto Race to basically take advantage of the display and also just be a little bit more modern looking, something they haven't changed in quite a while. That's all being revamped here. And that kind of enumerates itself in a bunch of different ways. The first one is you're seeing those what are called mini widgets. So as you swipe down, you basically get these smaller widgets, and then you can tap into them to get the full-size widgets. You're also seeing a bit of a consolidated daily summary as well, different places for the control panel and so on. Now, Suunto notes with all this, they've increased performance compared to the previous watch. That is definitely true, but there are still some areas where you're seeing a little bit of lag, mostly when I open up a new component or new area. Then for that first time I've done that, it just seems to lag a little bit. After I'm in that component, whether it be a certain widget area or sport mode, then it's totally fine. It's just that like getting over the initial hump that it kind of like just pauses for a brief second there. Now, the next thing you're gonna notice on the watch face is they've added the ability to show the HRV status. It makes sense given they added HRV status, but also the ability to show some of the training load features. For example, TSB and CTL, those are shown there as well. And then further each morning when you wake up, you've got the morning report of sorts that Suunto added previously, but new to that is the addition of sleep stage information on the watch itself. They've tracked sleep stages in the past, but now they're actually enumerating it on the watch. And you can see that not only in that morning report, but also down in the widgets as well. Now, they've added a slate of other smaller things as well. I'm just gonna like rapid fire through these really quick here. Number one, they've added the ability for multiple alarms. They've added a new Find My Phone feature. They've added a new stand reminder. They've added the ability to show progress towards your running race estimates as well as your heart rate running throreshold. They've added a customization of widgets. They've added a do not disturb mode. They've revamped the music control for better touchscreen interaction, and they've added a new sport, which is rope skipping. But you've got rope skipping now, so you better skip on to that. Also notable, this is the very first Suunto watch that has fully in-house algorithms. Up until now, Suunto has used to some extent first beat algorithms. Years ago, it was 100% first beat algorithms, and then over the last couple of years, they've slowly transitioned away from that, given Garmin's acquisition of first beat back a couple of years ago. And so this is the very first Suunto watch that is 100% Suunto internal algorithms, or at least other licensed algorithms. For example, in the case of Training Peaks, there are licensed components there, but otherwise it's totally internal for all the sleep and all the other metrics that are there. And then beyond that, from a hardware standpoint, this watch has 100-meter waterproofing or water resistance level. It also retains all the existing basically snorkeling and shallow free diving-ish, mermaiding as we're calling it, features for tracking things like from a depth gauge standpoint. It is not a dive watch. It's not designed to be a dive watch, but it will do shallow depth tracking to a certain extent anyways, and you can see that after the fact in the app, which is kind of neat. And then also of note is that it has standard 22mm straps on it, so you can swap out whatever strap you want from any source that you want. And then lastly, from a weight standpoint, it comes in at 69 grams for titanium and 83 grams for stainless steel. Also, all those new software features that I mentioned, virtually everything is going over the Suunto Vertical as well. Suunto basically sees these two watches as kind of equals from a software standpoint, instead just different from a display standpoint. Very similar in concept to how Garmin has their Phoenix lineup and then their Epix lineup that share the same software, but have simply different display types. So here's a chart right now showing all the features in which watches they're going to. The TLDR there is that basically every feature is going to the Suunto Vertical, and almost all of them are going to the Suunto Peak Pro as well, and then others are going to different watches. The timelines vary slightly based on what they can get done, but over the next few months, those should all become more or less equal. Oh, and one last thing, these headphones, yeah, there's also Suunto 2, also released today. called the Suunto Wing. Their main claim to fame is they've got LEDs on the side so you can be seen at night, as well as being, quote, shower proof. So you can, hang out in the shower, or more importantly, the idea there being that you won't kill them. That's a separate video for another day. Let's not get too distracted here. Now, as I said, this is a super impressive go for a watch, especially the price point. I mean, it's very solid hardware to begin with, but from a price point standpoint, it's just, as I said many times, mind-boggling. So kudos to Suunto for having that, and I think from a delivery perspective and whether or not the watch meets the landscape of those watches in that same price point, thus far in my testing, it is delivering there as well. So that's really good to see. Again, stay tuned for my full in-depth review on this, where I'll dive into all the nitty-gritty of accuracy and stuff like that, and also a little bit closer look at battery performance on some of the really long activities, something I'm here to do, and so I want to get some of that data gathered just to see how that performs on this final firmware, compared to, for example, that long hike in the French Alps that was earlier firmware. With that, after a busy week of talking, I'm slowly losing my voice. So if you did find this video interesting and useful, give it a like at the bottom there, or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. Have a good one.